Welcome to another episode of the Faith+Business podcast of the Lakewood Business Ministry. I am so elated to have with me today my brother, my friend, and the mentor, Sean Collins. How you doing, brother?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Well, we know that just as we experience 4 seasons in nature, we also experience the same in business as well. And today's episode will be the start of a series of conversations focused on the various business activities that take place within each season. We know with spring, we have the startup or launch phase, if you will. Summer brings on the growth phase. Fall is that maturity phase. And then winter, it's a renewal or decline. And as you've already heard, I have with me Sean Collins. Sean has been in business for at least 30 years, started off right after high school, went in, started off from the ground up, so to speak. They're handling the phones and then handling back office operations, and then eventually owning on his company, X4 Communications, which has been in business since 2008. That's like 14 years in business. So that's like lots of seasons of business for sure. And now Sean also owns a gym franchise, the Anytime Fitness. So Sean, again, welcome. And just take a few minutes here. And I just gave that brief introduction, but expand on that and introduce yourself formally to our viewers.
Okay. Well, first, thanks for having me on, and I hope something I say can be helpful to any of the viewers or listeners. S4 is a business processing outsourcing company. We do call center, admin services, a variety of different services for Fortune 500 companies. I currently have about between 400 and 450 employees here in the United States, and then another 400 to 450 employees in the Philippines as well. So we've got about 900 people in staff right now. We're about $20 million in revenue this year, which is a high for us. We've been very, very blessed during COVID that it's actually been better for our business. We were considered essential services because we provide services and support to telco and to energy. So we were not only able to work, but we were encouraged to work. We needed to work. We had to help customers who were having problems. If you recall, there was a lot of governmental focus on making sure that lights were not being turned off, people couldn't pay bills and things like that. So there was a lot of regulation around that. And then, our participation representing a variety of companies that provide those services. I would say S4, you talk about seasons, seasons is a great analogy, and I know the scripture that you guys reference in here is a great analogy, but it's funny because I don't think the seasons always just line up. They don't line up like spring, summer, fall, and winter. We went through some real drastic changes here. So, it'd be interesting. We'll talk more about it as we go. So the reason I say that is that we're really in recovery. So I don't know what season that is. Maybe we're back to summer after having gone through a fall, and then a fall is a pretty good example. Our top was 30 million, and now we're at 20 million, and that's a recovery for us. In addition to that, like you said, I own a franchise, Anytime Fitness, in Sugar Land, Texas. I don't know how many people open gyms up during pandemics, but I decided I was going to be one. And we're doing okay. And currently have the call center company, which is that's really my job. We're talking about seasons, and there were some questions about what's next. The gym is kind of my what's next for me.
Okay, thank you, brother. And so there's so much we can tap into there. Like now 30 million was the initial, now it's 20, so it's recovery. But there was also a time when there was the revenue wasn't even close to that, so that's a different season that we can also touch on, and our viewers and listeners will be able to glean from that. So the verse you're talking about, Ecclesiastes 3:1-2, it says, to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. You kind of already was walking into this question. So we know that there is a time to plant, as the Bible says, and then there's also a time to uproot what's been planted. Could you share when you knew it was the right season to launch a business? Like, okay, if you take the context of the gym, like what led you to that, what was that like for you getting to the process of, hey, I'm going to launch a gym business in the middle of a pandemic? And if you could pull back as well to the beginning of X4 Communications, what was it like for that season?
Yeah, and I think the gym was a response to the winter season of S4. Mm-hmm. I recognized that it wasn't going to be forever, and so I started thinking about, first of all, there are some short-term things that I want to do, and I think that drives a lot of us. We look at our own personal short-term goals. I have 5 children, and we're, my wife and I were later in our with our children. In fact, our youngest is a junior in college. So, like, as part of my financial targeting was to get them through school with no debt. And that was no debt for me, no debt for them.
Amen.
I wanted them to be able to do that. And yeah, and amen. God, that's an absolute blessing. And so, all of these milestones that were major hurdles in life that I wanted to get past, I'm starting to get to the end of those. And so I was thinking, there's, we're going to talk about how it ends. And part of this was me figuring out, I'm not exactly sure how it ends, but I can envision now that it's going to. And so the gym was really a response to that. And, I did my research and I looked at what were the most successful gym or successful franchises. I actually went to the SBA and I looked at the top 10 SBA loans that were made out of there, which is a recommendation I would make to all of you, to anybody interested in doing a business. Because a lot of those top 10 ventures, the SBA wants to give the money for those. Like the whole business plan that you put together, if Sean says, I want to open a gym, and I put together a business plan and I go to present it to the SBA, it's very, very challenging. But if I go with this brand, because it's one of the top 10, it's almost like, I don't want to call it rubber stamp, but the process is really, really easy. And they do it because they look at the number of loans they give and the number that fail. And so in the gym, it was like less than 2% of the loans that the SBA gives for Anytime Fitnesses fail. So I was like, hopefully I cannot be part of that 2%. Now, I did all of this well before there was ever a pandemic. In fact, the pandemic announcement, March 13th, when they announced everything was shutting down, I was in training for the gym up in Minneapolis. So, I think that the big decision for me was whether or not I was going to continue forward, and I decided to continue forward. I think also the analogy of seasons is great, and I think it's, a lot of times pastors' message on the pulpit talks about, while you might be in a tough situation, you don't know what God's preparing for you. And so I say that because I don't, how do you know what season? I didn't know what season I was in. When I started S4, I had actually gone through a season where I was in this call center industry where I managed the operations directly. And this situation that I had was coming to an end, and I went to a different side of the business, a wholly different side of the business. It's a part of the business I had not done for 20 years. And I did it for 1 year, and the circumstances of how I got into that position is a whole nother podcast, but it was God. God opened that door. He put me in there. Wow. The timing was perfect. Every piece of that job, I know God delivered for me. And so when I was in it, I was like, I'm not supposed to leave it because he put me here. I am so confident he put me here. I cannot process that I'm supposed to leave it. And I actually have my business partner who was much more confident in me, and he kept pushing me. And so I kept setting these milestones in the business plan. Well, if I'll do it if we can get to here. And I kept we kept beating it. Like I would go, okay, well, I need to know that I can get, 20 jobs from right at the beginning when I knew 20 jobs was not doable. And my client would come to me and go, you're going to open a company? I'm going to give you 40 jobs. I'm like, dang it, that's not what I wanted to hear. I wanted you to say 10 so that I could back out. I just kept looking for reasons to back out of this. Yeah. And it just kept going and it kept doing better. And here's what I would tell you is I did not know that I would, and by the way, the door closed for me in that other job. They went through a reorganization and I was the newest on the team. And when I went in and when I got engaged into the company and then I needed to do that, what's crazy is if you looked at my resume and all the things it would be for me to be a successful president of this company, there was one glaring thing that I was not good at. And it was the one thing that was my only job during that 1 year at that company. And I didn't know that because 2 years later is when that skill set was needed. And I looked at it 2 years later because I always said, God, you put me there. Why'd you take me out? But 2 years later, I was like, oh my word. All of these connections I made and all these things I learned during that 1 year of doing an odd part of my job prepared me for the opportunity right now. And because of that, our company exploded. But had I not had that 1 year detour, and so I say that because you don't know what your season is. And sometimes God puts you in places and you're like, God put me here. I was convinced I was supposed to stay. Like every part of me, what I wanted to do, I was like, man, I'm not supposed to leave this. I don't want to be here. This is not the job I want. I want to go do that thing, but I know God put me here for a reason. And I don't feel comfortable about leaving. And the only way I would have left is with what happened. He shut the door for me. But what was clear to me is again, you walk away from that situation confused and you're like, I really felt like he put me there. How did that happen? But 2 years, that vision became so clear to me that I was like, oh man, you are so smart. Like when they say you see the steps, every step, that was like, it was like, I remember sitting there and we were in a situation and it was actually during a hurricane and I'm having a conversation with a business partner and he was like, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. And I was like, man, I can do all those things. And I got this connection. And as I was talking, I was going, oh my word. Because I had toiled with, is this the right season to do it? So I don't know. What I would say is how do you know it's the right season? I think when you see things happening that only can be God lining them up, that should be the clearest message. I'll give you one quick example. We're starting this brand new company. We didn't have money and I was trying to bring clients into this brand new office that was empty. We wanted to show it off and say, hey, this could be where you put your business. And my business partner and I, we went down to Harwin here and we started looking at furniture. It was tens and tens of thousands of dollars to buy furniture that would have been the scale we wanted. We wanted to look like a professional company. We could have put cheap stuff, but we wanted to look credible. And I remember we're toiling and I was like, man, this is just not going to work out. They're going to come in. It's not going to. And I get a call from one of my old companies and it's basically the old CEO of my company who says, hey, listen, I have this warehouse full of all this furniture. I literally need you. Do you want it? Because I'm about to throw it away. And it was like steel case, the best of the best stuff. And I was like, I will be over there with my truck in 5 minutes. And I was like, how much do you want for it? And he was like, I want it out of the storage room. You can have it. That stuff, you go, okay, I know. When these clients walked in and they saw every office that would have been set up and they were all professional, that's one of the things. They walked in, they said, wow, this is ready to go. And the whole, if you build it, they'll come. We built it, but I would not have built it without God's,
aligning and everything.
And that's just one example. I could just give you so many examples of that process where it was like, oh man, that was God. That was God. It was awesome.
Yeah. One verse that came to mind as you just kept on talking, brother, was Proverbs 3, from verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he should direct your path. Okay, we always talk about that first step. You have to make that first step in faith because he won't show you the entire staircase, but you just have to trust him, and you did that. Like, well, okay, if this is where you want me, but still, why was what was that about? But he will always use everything that we go through. You know, Pastor always talks about, hey, the mother eagle will come and kick the eaglets out of the nest after a while. And especially when he has a purpose for you, he won't let you stay mediocre. He won't let you stay where you're like, well, you know, this place is just good for me. He will start orchestrating things that will just push you. So one thing I'm getting from you is to just trust him, lean into his understanding, and just continue to commit all your ways to him.
Yeah, and I would say one thing that we talked about me being part of the intern program. One of the things I've always told interns is, I think sometimes we think prayer, we're waiting for a specific answer or something like that. It's never going to come. So I will tell you one thing I do is I make decisions. And so it's like that company. I said, and I will say this in my prayer all the time, God, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to do it. And if this is wrong, close the door for me or help me understand which direction you go. But I'm not going to sit here forever and wait. I'm not waiting. There's no more burning bushes. God's not Gandalf. He's not Santa Claus. He's not going to deliver stuff just because I need to. I was telling someone today, I said, the great thing about God is he's a multiplier. And so if I give one and he gives 1,000, I get 1,000. If I give 1,000 and he gives 1,000, but if I give zero, no matter what God's doing, now he can overcome me. But at the end of the day, God does not want to operate where I'm giving zero. I have to step out in that faith. I have to, even if that one is me making the scary decision to say, I'm going to do this, because then he will start closing doors and opening them. He'll make it more apparent because he will redirect you because you're always in accordance with him. When you love him, even if you make the wrong decision because you think it's the right one, he'll redirect you. But if you just sit there in fear, not doing anything, I just don't know that fear's not God, right? And so it's not that he can't operate in that environment. It's that you said, don't come in my environment. I'm going to block you with fear. Stay out of here.
Yeah. Oh, brother. See, Pastor Nick shared this message a while back about, and he used the analogy of football teams. Okay, we'll huddle, and we'll talk. Okay, this is the play. Omaha this. Others will execute. Christians, we tend to just stay in that huddle because, like you said, we're waiting for the burning bush. We're waiting for this voice to come. The Spirit is in us, indwelling in us. Like you see, so the Bible says that we don't even know what to pray for. It's the Spirit that interprets our prayers. So certain desires that we don't even know, he drops it in our heart. And you are so right, because we'll not get into decision paralysis. Like, oh, is it this? Is it that? Pray over it. Make sure that you have done your diligent work and then move on it, bro. Oh man, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I actually, in my business, we talk about that. We call it paralysis by analysis, where you just sit there and you look at the problem forever, but you don't move. I honestly believe that even the wrong motion forward can be fixed. Sitting still cannot be fixed, because even as the motion goes forward, if it's wrong, it will make itself evident that it is wrong as you move forward. The other thing I believe too is that a lot of times God wants what makes us happy. And so when we move towards that, so sometimes, like I've met people who are like, I have no feeling about the things I'm praying about, but this is the one I really want. And well, then go do it, because God wants you to be happy. By the way, just so you know, which job you take is not going to end the universe for him. He'll fix it if it's the wrong one. You know what I mean? But he'll only fix it if you stay with them. If you're continuing to say, God, this is the move I'm making, but your will, not mine. Change me. Close this door and open another one, but I'm going to move forward with this, but your will, not mine. I'm going this way in the absence of knowing, but your will, not mine. And that's been my prayer, is always to just be like, listen, I'm going to keep moving forward, but I am open to the fact that your will may be different, but help me.
Lead me.
Yeah, close that door, move me off to the side if that's what I'm supposed to do.
Bro, yes, that again, whatever season it is, just trusting in him, just being attentive and just keep moving. That's the thing. Because if we use our analogy of the seasons, which we see in nature, fall, after fall comes winter. Fall doesn't stay forever. After winter comes spring. It keeps on moving. It's never like, oh, this spring is going to last all 2022 or all 2020. No, it's going to switch into the next season. Now, you've been doing this for 30 years at least, first of all, starting in working the phones and then having your business, navigating all of this. If as you reflect back over these years of being an entrepreneur and a business leader, which season in business would you say is your favorite, and why is that?
I think spring is the funnest, or the startup phase.
Yes.
It's so full of possibilities. There's great, when you're sitting there with someone and you've got a piece of paper and you're just, I think it could be like this and I think it could be like that. And you're just kind of whipping out ideas and there's just all this innovation. And then you go and apply it and you see it moving. I think that's probably the funnest. You also recognize that there are costs associated. So as you're investing with no return, it makes sense. I think everything after that gets tough.
Yeah.
And so I would say, I would definitely say that I think spring is probably the funnest. Again, it's so full of potential. You're seeing exponential growth. And again, while there's stress, there's reward. As you start to get into the into the summer and into the fall and winter, I think the rhythm gets more normal and the stresses start to grow. And then now there's a delivery. You have to deliver at that point.
If we look at it like, okay, kids, right? I have a 4-year-old about to be 5. You have older kids. That stage when they just start getting into life, like when they start walking, when I had my baby, everybody was like, man, treasure these days, they're going to go by so quick. And now I see that, I say that in the sense of when they're just starting to babble words together, when they're starting to just grow and starting to have conversations with you, it's different from where they are now. When in your case, having grown-up kids where you kind of already understand. Back then, it was more of, you don't know what's going to happen today. Is today the day they start walking? Is today the day they start crawling? Is today they say dada? Okay, is this the day they say their first words? All of that, and it's so, again, that's that place where you're planting the seeds, where there's so much potential, there's so much hope, and then being a missionary in the marketplace with God, with us, you're now like, yeah, it's just an interesting time. I love that season as well. Absolutely. Yeah. So we've been talking about the seasons of business, and you've shared how your kind of, not intentionally, but we've been dabbling into how your Christian faith has been helping you, talked about how, okay, trusting God, even your prayer, sharing that, how that prayer phase is. But let's spend a few minutes now and just dive into that specific. How has your Christian faith helped you navigate the seasons of business, whether it's spring when you're planting, or summer or fall, or times of famine or drought where, okay, it was 30 million, then it went down and now it's coming back? How has your Christian faith helped you?
Yeah, it's the same thing about the job, because sometimes too that you're praying about things and you got so you're so focused on praying for things that when they start to fall apart, it's easy to kind of disconnect with, is really here helping me? My wife just busted her hip in the marathon, and she said, I prayed through the entire training process. I just don't understand why it would happen on marathon day. What was God's intention in that? So what I would say is that, I think that faith is, it's easy for us because it's always easiest to flex when we're in trouble. You know what? That's the place to go. So I think I would answer that question 2 ways. One is, we started in 2008, and in 2008, there was not one single year where we didn't grow. It just grew and grew and grew. And 15 and 16 were amazing. And then there was a contract change in 17. And the contract change, there was a contract change, and then about 7 months into the contract change, there was a management change. And why I say all of that is that as it became apparent that the contract was not good, and we were going and petitioning to the enterprise to say, hey, we've got to change this. This is not, we changed it, we modified it, and it's not working out the way it's supposed to be. The management train, who then is not going, they're going to be paralyzed to move for X number of months while they try to figure out what the unit's supposed to look like. Mm-hmm. And Remy, I got to tell you, all of the progress I made between 2008 and 2016, I wiped out in between 2017 and mid 2019. And it was dark. And I tell you, I prayed a lot about it. I can't even tell you how many times I'd walk into my operation when no one was here, and I'd walk in areas and pray on stations, and I'd just be like, man, I'm responsible for all these people. If I have to lay them off, if the doors get locked down, I was losing in a month what it took me 4 months to make. And it was fast. And the problem is that I was going, I think there's going to be a bottom, but you can't project where, is the bottom so low that you have destroyed yourself, or is it somewhere that you can recover? And I think the first thing that I would tell people is that, I prayed to have comfort that I should continue. Should I continue? And I think that at any given point, I was ready to say, that's it, we're done. And, I think that leaning in on him, I never felt comfortable. I always felt like he was saying that keep going. It's gonna right itself. And it did, and honestly, as crazy as it's gonna sound, the pandemic was for my company, really kind of helped turn things around for us. I can also tell you during all those times, Brandon can attest to this, there were all these, hurricanes and things like that were going on. And I continued to serve, I continued to work in purpose, even when all this stress at work was going on. I can remember sitting out there one day and I was loading boxes as people were going through the drive-through. And in that day, as I was doing it, in between serving all those people, I remember in my head going, I wonder, there was a conversation I was having the next day that I was like, I don't know if we're going to be open the next day. And so, I think my faith, first of all, I think faith is a great distraction to problems. I mean, you can just get in there and find so much joy. The one place I like to have my Bibles is here at the office. It sits on my desk, and everybody who comes in here sees it. It's sitting right here. And whenever I'm studying, like right now I'm studying Matthew. So I have a book about Matthew that I'm studying, and they see that. And that's, for me, I spend a lot of time in this office, and that's where that becomes evident for people. And so I think folks around here know that. So I think, it's important that, again, that you're staying in that rhythm. I think that is a different direction about how did my Christian faith is that, I've always been very open. It's really nice for me because I'm the president of the company. I don't, if you're going to go report me to ER about being too open about your Christian faith, I mean, you're going to report to me. So sorry, but I've tried to always honor that. I don't want to beat anybody down. But it's interesting that if you will just talk about the things in your life that you're doing, like people come in on the week and say, hey, how was your week? And I said, well, you know what? I went out and I served and did that. Well, what do you mean? Well, I went out and I did this and I was doing this for these people. And that it's great. It's easy to start a conversation. You don't have to say, hey, can you tell me about what you think about God or Jesus? You can just tell them about what you're doing. And because I'm an active participant in stuff at church, those conversations just kind of came up. I say that too, because I with my senior leadership team, I always made it real clear. You guys don't think I have a boss, but I do have a boss. And I am going to hold myself to an integrity standard that's up to his standard. And I think that if you talk to my clients, one of the things that they'll tell you is that I am a no nonsense, candid kind of guy, and I will bring problems straight to them. I'm not trying to hide them. One of my clients, he says, man, you know your stuff. And he said, and if there's a problem, I get a call from you versus having to track people down. I have the same thing with my team. We do a lot of transaction stuff here. So we come in contact with a lot of financial information. We sell a lot of things. We have credit cards, and it is an environment that is rife with opportunity for lack of integrity. And the way I pursue that and the way I handle that, I think from a reputation standpoint, people understand, and that is all steered. So when people say, why are you so ferocious about that? I go, because I am steered by my boss. You know what I mean? My boss is not here. I'm the president of this company, and I have to hold myself accountable to somebody. And the person I choose to hold myself accountable has a real high standard. And so not with how we perform necessarily. We can do a bad job as long as we're trying as hard as we can, but we're not going to break rules. We're going to operate with integrity. We're going to operate with truthfulness. We're going to be open. We're going to be an open book. So I think in how that's been clear to everybody who's on my team. I don't walk around and, I believe in Jesus, you need to believe in Jesus, none of that stuff. But I have had conversations with people, many conversations with people over periods of time. I've had people that are sick that will come in and ask me if I'll pray with them and stuff like that. But mostly because they believe, you learn more about people watching them than you do what they tell you. And what they'll see from me is, they're going to see me talking about servant leadership. And I go, well, what's servant leadership? And what does that mean? And give me an example. I go, oh, okay, I can give you an example. Jesus was a servant leader. I got a book. It's called Lead Like Jesus. So you don't always have to tell people about that, and it will land them. It's really not surprising how much people really want the opportunity to talk about faith. Even if they're another faith. My business partner is actually Muslim, and he will have conversations with me about Jesus and stuff like that, and what I'm doing at church. And our company as a whole has, when the hurricanes came in, I told him we were doing stuff at church. He was like, hey, let's go give money to your church, because not just because of me. Anyways. Does that answer the question? I think it does.
Bro, like 1,000%. So many nuggets in there. First of all, during the hard times, it wasn't a time where you run, right? And I've said this, me and my family had to walk through a tough time like that too. But that's when you run even closer, even deeper to him. And then in the midst of what you're going through, you took your eyes off yourself and focused on those that needed help. Tomorrow I have a conversation that might end me. It might be the end of all my years of work, but I'm going to go serve. I'm going to go put boxes in the cars of people. Like this, the same thing. I always remember that story Mama Dodi did when she had that diagnosis. Like, you know what? Let me go pray for other people. It's almost like, hey, I'm good. What I've asked for, I just believe I've received it. So let me focus on other people. Mine will come, right? And then when you talk about being led by integrity, and that's kind of why, that's why he blesses the business, because he can trust you. He can, it's not something that even in that time of that dark period, like you shared, it could be times where you're like, you know what? Let's cut corners a little bit. How can we do this or do that? But it was still, no, we're still going to be standing on integrity. We're still going to be faithful. And when you now eventually come with the, hey, this is how I'm going to lead my life. I've always heard it said, and I say this all the time, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's one. And then we are supposed to be like the 67, 68 book of the Bible. People are supposed to read Sean chapter 50. Oh, this is what he came across and this is how he did it. John chapter 5, and that's what you're doing. Because if you were leading a separate life, they wouldn't look at you and ask you those questions. They wouldn't lean in. If you were just, okay, I'll hold the Bible so they know that I'm a Christian, but I'll not do this and that, then they'll look like, okay, something is not right. But you're leading both in business and in your real life, like standing, there's no disconnection. It's the same across the board. Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things I know I tell, because listen, I'm a messy Christian, and what I would, and I don't even call myself Christian. I'm a messy lover of Christ. And one of the things I tell people that I actually think helps in the audiences that I'm talking to, is that I say, being a Christian just means that I know better. Doesn't mean I do better. It just means I know I'm not supposed to do certain things. and I know where to go look for the right answer. And I say, but because a lot of people, they'll come to me and they'll say, I'm not Christian, I'm doing, I can't do that. And, you're Sean, you got all your stuff together. I'm like, no, but that's not being Christian just means that I know I'm supposed to know better, that I tell people all the time, one of my, I'm born again. I was actually saved at Lakewood Church in 2004. And one of the things I struggle with is kind of anger management and stuff like that. And that's an everyday prayer. As soon as I wake up, I'm praying about how I treat people and stuff like that. And I tell people that all the time. That's my everyday prayer. I will never, how do you get past that? You don't. Every day, probably for the rest of my life, I'm going to be praying about that. But I think that shows vulnerability in a business professional, that you can still be a follower and have problems. And I'm very open to say to people, yeah, I love Jesus, I love God, and man, I'm a mess. Thank God thank God they're them and not me, because I don't treat people as well as they do. They're willing to look past the fact that I just bit somebody's head off because of poor sales performance. But what it does help me, that compass helps me, is to remind me to go back and apologize to that person and try to repair that relationship and try to ask for forgiveness, and where I would not have before. My ego, my arrogance would have kept me from that before. I'm the president. And now it's more of a humbleness. And that's like I said, when I talk to people, when my sales team leaders are out there working with agents, and then they come in contact with me and they're like, man, I thought you were going to be this, but you're not. And that's where I can then have the conversation. I go, yeah, because it's important to me that we start leading by being a servant. And then they go, well, what does that mean? And then you start to have those conversations, and just kind of continues to go on.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, that is it, brother. That is it. And you're so right. It's him that is working in us. We by ourselves, no, we can't. It's him that's continuing to work in us. And yeah, you said the wrong thing here. That wasn't the way you were supposed to talk to your wife. You were supposed to do this to that person. And then now in obedience, we do that. That is so good, brother. Thank you so much. So as we continue here, now, with all the years of experience you have, how can entrepreneurs and business leaders be better prepared to handle each season of business?
I don't know the answer fully to that, because it's so complex. But what I can tell you, the season that I wish I would have planned for, was for success. I planned really hard to grow. I thought through everything I needed to do and talk to, and what would happen if it didn't work, and if it did work, and go here. And I had these Venn diagrams of all the things you're supposed to do. And when you're in trouble, you kind of go, okay, you do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this. But I remember the very first time we made money. We made money in 2010. I remember we came to December and we were like, hey, I remember my business partner coming to me, and we'd made it all kind of like at the end of the year. Like all year we were kind of break even. We were just so excited we were breaking even. Yeah. And we got to the end of the year and we made some money. And I was like, yeah, we were so excited, but I wasn't prepared for it. And the honest to goodness truth is that March, April, May came around, and the accountant came in and said, hey, you're going to have to pay this much in taxes. And I went, what? And he said, well, yeah, because of the way you've incorporated. I learned all this stuff about the way, okay, so I have to pay money on that profit, but even though I didn't take it, and so I actually owe more money than I paid myself last year. And so it was wild. It was success kind of. I started to have considerations that I had never even considered. I'd never thought about. I'd never thought about how do you profit in a company? And as the owner of the company, how do you do that? And then how do you make decisions when you're in that period of growth? I'll give you another example. Probably 2010, 2011. I wish I had been more thoughtful about some business I accepted, because I ended up extending the company to add more fixed. I got another facility. I did all of these things. But the net of it, when it was all said and done, is I doubled the amount of work. I doubled the amount of revenue. The profit was the exact same. So all I did was gave everybody in the organization more pressure, more stress, more work. But in fact, the company made the exact same amount. But in retrospect, I knew that I just needed to be less excited about what looked like opportunity and really dig into what was opportunity. Be more willing to ground myself in, what is it was one of the first times I made a decision that was outside of the identity of our company. I'd always said, we're going to do this kind of stuff really, really well. And this opportunity came and I said, well, that's not really what we do, but let's do it. And the consequence was, so I think in terms of seasons, I guess that's the summer season, because that's when you're starting to see the fruits of your labor. And I guess be more thoughtful about what those fruits look like. Like, it's not, a lot of times when things aren't going well, there's a lot of things that we don't even determine. Our hand is going to be played. And like I said, in the spring, you have these if-then formulas for everything, because you're kind of envisioning that I'm going to do this and this might happen, but this could happen. But as we get to that summertime, I don't know that we really have as good a plan. And I think that to me, it would be to focus on that. Be ready for success.
That's something a lot of people don't think of. Like you said, in that spring season, you always hear people say plan for the worst, right? So everybody's focusing on what happens but you don't really exactly. And then, okay, now here comes success. You were having all the plans, plan A, plan B, plan C. If things don't work, what if it works? Nobody really thinks so, because you don't want to jinx it. So let's just focus on the body. That is so good, but I've never heard anybody say that.
Yeah, and what's funny is that initial success caused me more problems than, it took me longer to figure out how to deal with that than it took me to, to figure out how to build the company, to be real honest. So anyways.
That's so good, brother. As we begin to wrap up here, is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners before we conclude our time together?
No, I think that, I first of all, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully, somebody got something out of this. I would encourage everyone. I was talking to somebody today about business ownership, and I have a friend who has a wonderful business, but he's dumping too much into it. And I said, you got to go through your list of priorities. And when I was telling him, my company was like 5th or 6th on the list, and he said, yeah, but you spend all your time there. And I said, yeah, but the most important thing you can do is not let that thing impact the things that are the real priority. Now, I may have to spend more time at work because it facilitates all the things I'm doing for my family and for God and for my children. But what I can stop it from doing is it impacting them. That's when the priority has become distorted. And so I was trying to describe that to him, because he was like, I'm never going to spend 40 hours a week with my child. And he said, I'm going to spend this time. So when you tell me my child's a priority, I just don't know how to balance that with owning a company. And I said, here's the deal. You got to do the 40 hours at work and 50 hours, 60 hours at work. You got to do them to the best you can. But when that stuff starts to get dragged into your relationships with them is where you've now misplaced the priority. When you can say, I'm done with that and it doesn't matter, and I'm going to go focus on this. One thing I'll tell you, I think my family would say is, I don't think many of them knew that the company was going through a winter, because that was just not what, and it wasn't out of fear. It wasn't out of me saying, oh, I got to hide it from them. It was just like, they don't need to carry this burden. What's important for them is to know I love them. I'm going to provide for them and all those things. And I'll figure all that stuff out. It was not, like I said, it was not me hiding. I wasn't afraid to have the conversation. It was just that you don't need to carry that burden. What you need to focus on is, it's more important to me, the relationships and the conversations and the time for the family, and not burdening our family with what we're doing at work. It will occupy a lot of time, and it will try to steal priority, but it can't take away from, when it starts to do that, that's when something's wrong.
Thank you, brother.
Outside of that.
That is so good. Man, I mean, having that discipline to be like, okay, this is happening here, it's not affecting my people. Because sometimes people fail to do that, and that's a very great distinction. Thank you for sharing that with our listeners and viewers. When you bring that in, here comes all the chaos. Here comes, and then your family unit. So pretty much the home, as me and my wife keep on saying, it's like a sanctuary. It's that place where this is where I rest. Everything that's happening, stay there. Because you don't come home and because you had a bad day and then let the wife have it, let the children have it. Like, yeah, everybody's just going to feel bad because I'm feeling bad. But you knowing that you have a boss who is in control, is handling it. Okay, why am I going to now transfer it to anyone else? It's all good. And that's just another level of faith, though. Like, hey, it's not fear. I see it as more of faith. Looking at it like this will be handled. So there's no reason for me to start telling, let me play. This is my escape, not in a bad way, but this is like my sanctuary. Yeah, I appreciate that.
The other way I would put that is, and I want to be real careful because there's an integrity piece, like when you're married, stuff like that. The fact that I was in trouble, my wife knew. The emotion of us in trouble was not what I burdened her with. She knew the facts. She was not burdened with the emotion of those facts. Wow. And that's the important thing and I say, I say she wasn't burdened by, obviously me telling her, hey, the company's not doing well, puts burden on her, but it's different than me being like, oh man, I hate everybody. And that's what I'm talking about, being able to kind of discern those things and it's hard. It was hard. It's hard for me. It's still hard for me. It's like I said, it's hard for me even today on a daily basis to kind of, compartmentalize those things. But I think the way, and this is what I was telling my friend today, the way you do that is that you're clear on what your priority is. And, I always tell people, I used to tell the interns, I walk around with a card I made that has basically my personal vision, my personal mission, my value statements, and it's all about my family and what I'm doing for them. So if it's not inside of that, and I've had this in my pocket for 10, 12 years, and basically it just is, I'm going to leave people off better than the way they came in. This is my card. It's got my values. I made this, and this is my values, my vision, my mission for myself. This is personal for me. And anytime I'm kind of compromising this, it's just, I feel like it's easy for me if I'll just remember and come back to this as a compass. Anyways.
Oh, my brother. Bro, thank you so much, man. Like, yeah, and I know compartmentalizing that is not an easy thing. It's not something you do, but there is the intentionality behind it. There's, okay, this is what I need to do. This is priority, like you said. And when you set the standard, and thank you for that distinction as well, that, okay, yes, we are called to be one. So the wife has all the knowledge of where we are with business financially, but the emotion is separate. It's like, hey, let's do this with the kids. Nah, it's a bad day, man. I ain't doing nothing yet. No. Now, thank you so much. I appreciate all that.
Yep.
How can listeners connect with you? Are you on social?
I am on social media. I'm on as Sean Collins on Facebook, and I think I'm under, it's TXDUKKLR under Instagram. Okay. They can also just email me at Sean, SEAN, at s4communications.com. And then my number is 713-929-0601. That's my office. They can leave me a voicemail. I'm happy to have any conversations anybody wants to have. And I'm sure when you post this, you can just put that in the notes.
Absolutely. So. I'll add all that in there, Sean. It's no wonder. And we didn't touch on this, but within ministry, from what I know, you've helped with kids' life and you've helped with the interns. It's almost like, again, the spring season and maybe like a summer season, the kids as they're starting off. How many years were you in the kids' life ministry?
Oh, a long time. I was in newborn ministries. I had the 0 to 12-month-old baby.
Come on.
For a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And that's a funny story because that's one of those places where I ended up, that's a whole nother God story. I didn't feel released from that. And I was in 0 to 12 months for a couple of years. I was in 12-month to 24-month for about a year. And then I started in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and when I was born again, I was telling this funny story. When I was born again, when I first accepted Christ in my life, and I realized that service was the first way I could express my new, love. I was teaching third and fourth, fifth graders. I always tell people, it's funny, I was learning the Bible studies the week before I was teaching them. I would get the curriculum and I would go, oh, now obviously I would dig way more into it than just but in many ways, my initial kind of spiritual journey was God dealt it to me through a third, fourth, fifth grade curriculum. And I learned it in Sunday school. But I learned it as a Sunday school teacher.
Yes.
And it's funny because there's actually a young man who works for me was my youth helper. And I've known him for probably 15, 16 years. He's one of my employees. And I remember I would be doing Bible studies. And if I got something wrong, he was like 13 years old at the time. And he would be like, I don't know if that's right. And I would look at him and go, oh, okay, let's move on to the next subject. I basically started my journey into the Bible through Sunday school.
And then talking about seasons, then you transitioned into interns, being part of the leadership team or for the interns and getting them ready for ministry work. Yeah,
I miss those guys. I haven't done that in, I must say, it's been a few years. I was there for 7 or 8 years or something like that. I was there for quite some time.
Wow.
And, what I would encourage anybody to do is you don't need to be a part of a ministry. The church's ministry, there's so many things you can do. There's so many places you can help and serve and you can do it. I think sometimes it's like people who go to church on Sundays and that's their Christianity. You can serve, and especially as a business owner, I think that we're afforded the opportunity to bless people at all times. And it doesn't matter. I was tripping New York recently and you can go, I was walking around Grand Central Station and there are ways to bless people that are just sitting out there. There's just so much that can be done. And in many ways, even in the internship program, for example, I went to San Francisco and we served out there, but I got more out of that than, I went there as a leader, but I got more out of it than that. And it changed the way I started, viewing people and serving people and helping people. And so, I think being a servant leader is a 24/7 job. It's not just here at work. It's not just on Sunday. It's not when I go to the Sunday event and I've signed up to help out. It's the way we kind of serve people at all times. Thank
you so much, Sean. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I know that our listeners will be blessed, and I know for a fact that I got a lot from our conversation today, the seasons of business. Thank you, brother. God bless you.
Thanks. Appreciate you guys. God bless you.